fell deeds awake.
Now for wrath, now for ruin, and the Red Dawn!
Hello, Internet, and welcome back to Thesis Statement, and my ongoing attempt to turn this show into an unending nerdgasm without Shasti and Greg noticing. Today's topics are good, evil, and J.R.R. Tolkien. Strap in, folks. It's about to get nerdy up in this monkey fighting place. Before I get started with my argument, allow me to break down the argument I am addressing. J.R.R. Tolkien published The Lord of the Rings in 1954 and 1955 in the wake of the Second World War, and in a time where some good old-fashioned literary escapism was sorely needed. In so doing, he not only revamped the genre of fantasy and myth, but designed and created character tropes and settings that are still widely used today. And, casually created like 4 languages in the process. No biggie. Jesus, this guy was a genius on some scary levels. Now, one of the tropes he is credited with is that of unwavering good and evil. The dichotomy between the two was clear and defined. Sauron was totally bad, and Gandalf was totally good. This has led to a fair amount of criticism, mostly about his reduction of the story to good guys, paragons of justice always win, and bad guys, clear champions of evil, always lose. But is that really the case? Let's take a closer look, shall we? Starting at the top, there's a definite bad guy. Sauron is totally evil, and it would appear he always has been. For those whose interaction with the history of Middle-earth is solely The Lord of the Rings, that would indeed appear to be the case. Looking further back, though, Sauron's history is somewhat more complicated than that. Originally, Sauron, Saruman, and Gandalf were all angelic beings under the guidance of Eru Ilúvatar, the one true god of Tolkien's work. There was, as in the modern Christian interpretation of the Bible, a war in paradise, and under the leadership of a fallen archangel, Sauron and many others were evicted from paradise permanently. Just as a point that I don't know how to fit in organically, throughout the Silmarillion and other ancient history works after this point, Tolkien has written Sauron as a giant cat, a werewolf, and a vampire during his time as a lieutenant in Morgoth's evil army, before The Lord of the Rings. There's no substance to this point. It's just something that has fascinated and confused me ever since I was 12, and there are scant few who will talk about Tolkien long enough with me to get around to this point. So that sentence has been sitting on my chest for like 20 years. Carrying on. It can safely be asserted that from this point forward, Sauron's sole allegiance was to the forces of evil, eventually becoming the ultimate force of evil in the land. The discussion can be had as to whether Sauron ever could have defeated the Balrogs, as they were cut from the same cloth, and laid claim to the title of Supreme Evil, but that is perhaps a debate better left to the Prancing Pony podcast. Shout out, boys. So, we now have our totally evil bad guy established, but we also have precedent that even the baddest of the bad weren't always that way. Can the same be true of the goodest of the good, then? Gandalf, as previously mentioned, was originally an angelic being, according to the Legendarium. So he started out as an unsullied good guy. But are there any moments where he wasn't necessarily so good? Well, kind of. You see, there is a moment in the Fellowship of the Ring where the weight of what the ring is lands on Frodo's mind, and he offers the ring to Gandalf. While Gandalf does not accept it, and outright tells Frodo why, if you look close enough, it becomes apparent that Gandalf has thought about it, and the same is true of Galadriel. These paragons of truth and righteousness have contemplated taking the power of evil and bending into their will enough to know exactly how it would affect them. So while they never fall, it is clear in how they describe their relationship to the ring that they have faltered in a way. They have, in the very least, contemplated evil. And while this seems innocuous, it is incredibly important. Tolkien was a devout Catholic, and while he did everything in his power not to make his writings allegory for his faith, it was so much a part of him that little bits of it would seep in here and there. Here it is abundantly clear that good old J.R.R. knew that while Gandalf and Galadriel were undeniably good to their core, their goodness would waver from time to time. And wavering goodness is the first step towards bending and breaking goodness. The first step towards stealing is eyeing the thing you would steal with a sliver of lust. That is exactly how these two look at the ring. They demand that it never be in their sight, as they know their natural lust for it could eventually make them fall. Moving down the line, the examples become even more obvious. And when viewed through this lens, it makes perfect sense. We have established these monuments to good and evil, both with ever so slight shades of gray, and between them stand all the other characters in the mythos. Aragorn stands as the human equivalent to Gandalf. He knows the weakness of his blood. He knows the failings of his family, let alone his race. These things seed doubt in his mind as to whether he, the strongest and most steadfast man alive, would be strong enough to carry the ring to its doom. He knows he has the strength of will to accompany the ring bearer, but never once does he volunteer to carry the ring around his neck, even though he has more right to claim it than any other creature in Middle-earth, save the Dark Lord himself. Boromir stumbles, and ultimately his actions towards the ring cause the breaking of the Fellowship. He redeems himself in the eyes of the reader, but we are emotionally tricked into thinking he has to redeem himself at all. This is a man raised from his birth to do nothing except protect his people from the evils of Mordor. He has shed more blood and seen more friends die than we ever consider, and were we truly to consider his life as a whole, decent people everywhere would be compelled to provide him with some grace for a moment of weakness. Frodo himself does not even finish his quest by choice. He makes it all the way to Mount Doom and succumbs to the allure of the ring. Interestingly, we have grace on deck for him, despite how his decision not to destroy the ring would have doomed every living creature to servitude and torture had Gollum not bitten his finger off and slipped into the lava flow. We are more merciful towards this little hobbit for some reason. Interestingly, Tolkien seems to have almost seen this emotional response coming. Way back in a conversation in the Fellowship of the Ring between a disgusted Frodo, the character most often seen as the avatar for the reader, and Gandalf, our paragon of righteousness. Frodo is bemoaning the fact that Bilbo spared Gollum all those years ago, and Gandalf sets your boy straight. Gandalf, in an obvious paraphrase here, says, "Frodo, dude, Bilbo spared Gollum out of pity and mercy and grace. You need to mellow this harsh vibe and find the wells of pity and mercy and grace, because that despicable creature that's following us could very well be the key to your whole journey. So, cool it, bro." If I may channel my inner Keanu Reeves, it's very wise words from a very wise man. Excellent foreshadowing, Tolkien, my dude. Most excellent. So, in our everyday characters, we see this duality, or rather, we see a continuum. None of our evil characters reach as far evil as Sauron, even at their worst, and Sauron at his worst does not reach as far evil as Morgoth, the original evil. Likewise, none of our good guys are ever perfect, even at their best. Even Gandalf, who is, in everything but name, a goddamned angel. Now, Josh, you may be asking yourself, did you make this video just so you could have the floor and talk about this without anyone interrupting you? And I would say, yes. And no. It's complicated. It's complicated. You see, I don't partake of entertainment for leisure purposes. I don't really do anything for fun. Very boring. When I read a book, or watch a movie, or play a video game, I'm looking for moments of meaning and places of purpose where I can glean some sort of gold from the activity. I'm always looking for a lesson. From World War I, I learned when you fight with your cousins, it can get very messy. From the game of Monopoly, I learned that my baby sister is a bastion of greed and evil and never to trust her with my finances. From the movie Never Back Down, I learned that rage and physical strength do not equate to power and the ability to wield authority. From Tolkien, I learned that even the good guys have bad days, and that does not make them bad guys.
You are a bad guy, but this does not mean you're a bad guy.
I learned that there is a road that can lead a good guy down a bad road until he's no longer a good guy. I learned that strength can be learned in a garden, digging up weeds. I learned that doing the right thing together, we can overcome the greatest of evils. I learned that even those who start out with the desire to do good and help their fellow countrymen can be led astray by fear, doubt, and hopelessness. Dragons and demons may be dangerous and formidable, but our greatest enemies lie within. Our strongest enemies look like our strongest allies. And my most formidable foe wears my face. In these times of trouble and uncertainty, it is good to remember these things. G.K. Chesterton, a peer for a time of Tolkien's, wrote, "Fairy tales do not tell children that dragons exist. Children already know that dragons exist. Fairy tales tell children that dragons can be killed." In closing, I'd like to read you a line from The Hobbit that my father used to read to me way back when I first discovered Tolkien's works. "If more of us valued food and cheer and song above hoarded gold, it would be a merrier world." If you like this video, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Drop a comment in the section down below and tell me your thoughts. I'd love to see them. Read them. Really understand them. Did you agree with me? Am I right? Of course I am. Am I also full of shit? Probably. But tell me how exactly anyway. Now, if you feel so financially inclined, and you would be so kind, hit the link in the description down below that'll take you on over to our Patreon. There, as a patron, you will get early access to all of our episodes. That includes videos and podcasts. You'll get exclusive episodes of both of those, pilot episodes of shows that nobody ever gets to see, and some exclusive merch. Speaking of, if you liked this show, you'll probably enjoy our podcasts. The podcasts include more than just me staring into a camera and telling you my thoughts. I got Greg and Shasti there to back me up and really adding to the story and the depth of the project. That said, be good. If you can't be good, don't get caught. And say goodbye.